Now, I believe that this concern for his reputation ultimately lay behind his decision to free all of his slaves. Now, we have to remember, he's the only one of the major slaveholding founders to do so. Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, all big slaveholders, never freed their slaves. Now, we today are scarcely able to conceive of slavery, that is, one person owning another. But we have to realize that slavery had existed for thousands of years without substantial criticism. Not until the 18th century, and indeed, really not until the era of the American Revolution, does slavery become a problem for Western civilization. Because we have difficulty conceiving of slavery, Washington's actions inevitably seem to us to be too slow and too late. But if we're to be good historians and recover the past as it existed and not as we would want it to be, we have to realize how difficult, how courageous his actions really were. During the 1780s, he'd come to hope that some plan might be found to eliminate slavery. By the 1790s, he possessed close to 300 slaves, and this slaveholding was, he said, very repugnant to my feelings. Even if his fellow Virginians balked at doing anything, he became eager to act on his own. In 1799, 6 months before his premature and unforeseen death at age 67, he wrote a new will in which he not only freed his slaves, but provided money for the education of the young and the care of the old once they were freed. He wrote that new will in the teeth of opposition. Opposition from his state, his neighbors, his friends, his family, and perhaps even Martha. We think it should have been easy to free his slaves, but it was not. When he became president, Washington used his reputation and his great authority to hold the fledgling nation together. Indeed, Madison thought that Washington was the only part of the new government that captured the minds and the hearts of the people. Without him as the first president, this country might easily have fallen apart. The new United States as yet commanded little loyalty or affection, as I mentioned yesterday. The citizens were used to monarchy, and now they had a quasi-monarch in Washington. He stood for the Union, and the Union was very fragile. And the citizens' feelings for him, emotional feelings for him, were what really tied the Union together. No other founder could have played that role. As president, he fleshed out the office and established its independence. He set precedents that we still follow, especially in appointments, in foreign affairs, and in the president's relationship with the other parts of the government. But as in the case of his career as commander-in-chief, his most important act as president was his giving up of the office. Now, the significance of his retirement from the presidency is easy for us to overlook, but his contemporaries knew what it meant. Most people assumed that Washington would serve for life. Jefferson certainly thought so, that he would just die in office and then John Adams would become president and he would serve for life, and that's the way it would go, like the Polish king, an elected monarch. Something, of course, not out of the question in the 18th century. Hence his persistent efforts to retire from the presidency enhanced his moral authority and helped, I think, fix the Republican character of the Constitution. Now, he very much wanted to retire in 1792 at the end of his first term, but his advisors and friends felt otherwise. Madison admitted that when he had first urged Washington to accept the presidency, he had told him that he could protect himself from accusations of overweening ambition by a voluntary return to public life as soon as the state of the government would permit. But, said Madison, and everyone else said the same thing, the state of the government was not yet secure. You must stay on. And he wrote to everybody the same question, can I retire? And they said, no, you can't. The government is too insecure. You must continue. But in 1796, he was so determined to retire that no one could dissuade him. And his voluntary leaving of the office set a precedent that was not broken until FDR secured a third term in 1940. But so strong was the sentiment for a two-term limit that the tradition was written into the Constitution in the 22nd Amendment, adopted in 1951. Washington's action in 1796 was of great significance, like his retirement as Commander-in-Chief. That the chief executive of a state should willingly relinquish his office was an object lesson in republicanism at a time when the Republican experiment throughout the Atlantic world was very much in doubt.